Now, the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer recently announced plans to train millions of people in AI over the next 5 years, while Europe is aiming to mobilise 200 billion euros for investment in the technology. But is it too little too late? With me to discuss, I'm very pleased to say, is Carina Namih, partner at VC firm Plural, Laura McGinnis, principal at Balderton, and Tommy Stadlen, co-founder and general partner at Giant Ventures. All, of course, VC firms that have backed some really serious names in Europe and elsewhere. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I was at an event last year. Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, of course, stood up and he said, Europe, you have decided not to compete. Carina, is he right?
I love a controversial opener. I think that is clearly not the case. It may have been a while ago, but now we are feeling a real change of tone and a vibe shift in Europe. I think people are incredibly energized and recognizing that we have a real depth of talent here. We have increasingly the scar tissue and the experience amongst the founder community, people who've built successful businesses, exited those, come back into the ecosystem as investors like us at Plural, and are seeing incredible opportunities across the spectrum, from applied AI to material science to nuclear fusion. There are incredible innovations happening in Europe.
And that scar tissue is really important. I know you at Plural and the team at Plural lean into that, and you have your own scar tissue. Tommy, as do you, in terms of building a business. But you look back kind of 13 years or so, you had to move to the US, but now that would be different, is the argument maybe you're making, Tommy. Talk to us about the importance of scar tissue and your lessons.
Yeah, well, I started a startup as a Londoner in 2013, and I felt I had to move to California. Not enough talent here, not enough capital. We ended up selling that business to Microsoft, and there were definitely not acquirers like Microsoft knocking around in London. So I felt I had to move. When I moved back, became an investor and started Giant, and we're investing in Europe as well as the US, that has just totally changed. So London is now, I think, the number 3 in the world as a venture capital market. We've got, as you were saying, incredible AI talent, incredible biotech talent. We still don't have the exits, and that's, gonna come. Silicon Valley was not born in a day, built in a day, and so that will take some time. And I think what we really lack is the kind of big US tech giants. So someone like Amazon, their R&D budget is bigger than the entire UK private sectors. And NVIDIA, which we've been talking a lot about today already, that's almost as big in terms of market cap as the entire FTSE. And not having that big scale does come with challenges. It means there are not enough acquirers. Our public markets, which you and I have talked about in the past, are a real challenge in terms of the public market investors here not valuing technology and growth. So, of course, we've still got challenges. But Eric Schmidt is just wrong. We are competing. We're competing very, very hard, and we've got all the tools to win.
Laura, when it comes to the infrastructure piece, we had a reminder today of just how much capital is being put to play in terms of the infrastructure on AI, with Masayoshi Son of SoftBank pitching a $1 trillion project in Arizona to kind of build a Shenzhen of the US at a time when we're looking at the UK Prime Minister committing £1 billion, $1 trillion. I mean, to what extent is the gap caused by the fact that we do not have the infrastructure and we do not have the capital to fund that?
Yeah, I think, interesting question. I would say that I think about it as it's not the same race or not the same game per se. So when thinking about, I guess, US versus Europe versus China, like China is state-led and globally lacking like global trust and adoption. Then you get US and they're pouring money into the infrastructure layer, as you said. So most of the funding is going into just a few foundational model labs. And then you get Europe that's building heavily in the application layer. So I don't think of it as someone's behind. I think it's 3 different tracks and 3 different strategies. So.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we don't have to. First of all, it's very, very early in this race. We're still in the opening of this whole AI journey. And if you look at what China did with DeepSeek, Europe could clearly have its moment where we leapfrog in terms of capability. There are arguably second and third mover advantages. So training at the very frontier of AI models is incredibly expensive. But if you come in second and third and you think about how you make those technologies valuable and relevant to the economy today, that's something that I think Europe can really lead at. And we have, an amazing manufacturing base, second only to China. We have unique data sets. We have an amazing healthcare system across the continent. So there are talent, there are data sets, and there are ways that we can drive the application and diffusion of this technology through the economy.
So it doesn't matter that we have one foundation model, essentially, in Europe, which is Mistral. I mean, the race to AGI, if the US wins that race, or US companies look best positioned right now to win that race, doesn't that completely upend the dynamic?
Look, I think what you were saying earlier is right. There are two different races going on, and the UK is just never going to win the infrastructural race. We're kind of showing up with a pea shooter to a big gunfight. It's just not going to happen. £1 billion versus 500 million just for the US Stargate project. And also the Middle East are coming hard at this as well, right? Saudi and the UAE are spending hundreds of billions of dollars. We just don't have that capital in the UK and in Europe. But what we do have is simply world-class technical talent. So if we can win where it comes down to a race of who's got the best technical talent, who's got the best entrepreneurial talent, we can absolutely win there. And it is no coincidence at all that some of the godfathers of AI, Jan LeCun, Jeffrey Hinton, these are European people. So we've always had the talent. It's about now building the institutions.
We've got to bring them back, Tommy. And you've talked about some of that flow, and you're seeing that as well, Carina.
Yeah, it's fascinating how the brain drain has for many years and generations been flowing more towards the US, and we are seeing signs of that reversing. I was speaking to senior folks at Oxford and Cambridge, and they were saying the applications from the very best and brightest across academia and technology are 10 times more people applying from the US to these top universities that we have here. And we're seeing that across the board with our companies. I think an area where we do find it more difficult in Europe is with that muscle memory of true scale-up, of taking companies to the very biggest outcomes. And often we still have to import that talent, people who've seen that done and have the muscle memory of how that works from Silicon Valley. But it's only a matter of time as we get those exits.
Laura, are you seeing, on the regulatory front, you don't have to go far, you don't have to throw the stone very far within the VC world and the founders world to get complaints about the regulatory burden of Europe. How real is that, and where specifically is the regulatory burden most acute when it comes to the build-out of AI?
Yeah. So it's funny that you called it a burden, because you can also conversely call it a moat.
Sure.
In that a lot of companies building in Europe are privacy first at the jump, which means they appeal more strongly to highly regulated sectors like government, health, finance. And so I actually see starting with compliance controls in place from day one as being a major strength.
We've seen a bit of that too with sort of sovereignty, European sovereignty. We backed a company called Evrock, which is trying to build a sort of sovereign cloud for Europe. And, that never used to be something people would even want. But now I think people are thinking twice about storing their data in the US. And so I think there are areas where actually this kind of era of sort of broken globalization and nationalism in some ways can help Europe. And we've seen that with defense. We just saw Helsing on the screen, enormous growth in European defense tech as well.